Welcome. What is Brexit? Brexit is the name given to the United Kingdom's departure from the European Union. It is a combination of Britain and exit. Brexit caught on as shorthand for the proposal that Britain split from the European Union and change its relationship to the bloc on trade, security and migration. On Jan. 31, 2020, Britain began an 11-month transition in which it continues to abide by the EU rules and regulations while deciding what sort of Brexit to pursue. Brexit was the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the European Union. Following a June 2016 referendum, in which 52% voted to leave and 48% voted to stay, the UK government formally announced the country's withdrawal in March 2017. Beginning the Brexit process. The withdrawal was delayed by deadlock in the UK Parliament. Following a general election, Parliament ratified the withdrawal agreement, and the UK left the EU at 11 p.m. GMT on January 31, 2020. This began a transition period that is set to end on December 31, 2020. During which the UK and EU will negotiate their future relationship. The UK remains subject to EU law and remains part of the EU customs union and single market during the transition, but is no longer part of the EU's political bodies or institutions. Withdrawal was advocated by Eurosceptics and opposed by pro-Europeanists, with both spanning the political spectrum. The UK joined the European Communities in 1973, with continued membership endorsed in a 1975 referendum. In the 1970 and 1980, withdrawal from the EC was advocated mainly by the political left, e.g. in the Labour Party's 1983 election manifesto. The 1992 Maastricht Treaty founded the EU, but was not put to a referendum. The Eurosceptic wing of the Conservative Party led a rebellion over ratification of the treaty and, with the UK Independence Party and the cross-party People's Pledge campaign, pressured Conservative Prime Minister David Cameron to hold a referendum on continued EU membership, which was held in June 2016. Cameron, who had campaigned to remain, resigned after the result and was succeeded by Theresa May. On March 29, 2017, the UK government formally began the withdrawal process by invoking Article 50 of the Treaty on European Union with permission from Parliament. May called a snap general election in June 2017, which resulted in a Conservative minority government supported by the Democratic Unionist Party. UK-EU withdrawal negotiations began later that month. The UK negotiated to leave the EU customs union and single market. This resulted in the November 2018 withdrawal agreement, but the UK Parliament voted against ratifying it 3 times. The Labour Party wanted any agreement to maintain a customs union, while many Conservatives opposed the agreement's financial settlement, as well as the Irish backstop designed to prevent border controls between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. The Liberal Democrats, Scottish National Party, and others sought to reverse Brexit through a proposed second referendum. In March 2019, the UK Parliament voted for May to ask the EU to delay Brexit until April, and then later October. Having failed to get her agreement approved, May resigned as Prime Minister in July and was succeeded by Boris Johnson. He sought to replace parts of the agreement and vowed to leave the EU by the new deadline. On October 17, 2019, the UK government and EU agreed a revised withdrawal agreement, with new arrangements for Northern Ireland. Parliament approved the agreement for further scrutiny, but rejected passing it into law before the October 31 deadline, and forced the government to ask for a third Brexit delay. An early general election was then held on December 12. The Conservatives won a large majority in that election, with Johnson declaring that the UK would leave the EU in early 2020. The withdrawal agreement was ratified by the UK on January 23, by the EU on January 30, and entered into force on January 31. Many effects of Brexit depend on how closely the UK will be tied to the EU, or whether the transition period ends without terms being agreed. The broad consensus among economists is that Brexit will likely harm the UK's economy and reduce its real per capita income in the long term, and that the referendum itself damaged the economy. Brexit is likely to reduce immigration from European Economic Area countries to the UK and poses challenges for UK higher education, academic research, and security. Following Brexit, EU law and the EU Court of Justice no longer have supremacy over UK laws or its Supreme Court, except to a temporary extent. The European Union Act, 2018, retains relevant EU law as domestic law, which the UK could then amend or repeal. What is the European Union (EU)? The EU is an economic and political union involving 28 European countries. It allows free trade, which means goods can move between member countries without any checks or extra charges. The EU also allows free movement of people to live and work in whichever country they choose. Which countries make up the United Kingdom? The United Kingdom is made up of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Most voters in England and Wales supported Brexit, particularly in rural areas and smaller cities. That overcame majority support for remaining in the European Union among voters in London, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Why is it such a big deal? Europe is Britain's most important export market and its biggest source of foreign investment. What happens next? January 31, 2020 marks a symbolic milestone in Brexit. There is still a lot to talk about, and months of negotiation will follow. The end of the transition period is Dec. 31. Any request to extend that deadline would have to be made by June. The transition period is meant to give both sides some breathing space while a new free trade agreement is negotiated. Next steps involve negotiations with the EU over trade in manufactured goods as well as services, which make up the bulk of the British economy. If a new one cannot be agreed in time, then the UK faces the prospect of having to trade with no deal in place. That would mean tariffs on UK goods traveling to the EU and other trade barriers. What is Brexit? Thank you for watching this video. Goodbye.